Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cordix, so welcome to Yacc, yet another Crowcast where I pick a game, I play it for a week, and then I talk about it. This week's game is the Jetsons, the Invasion of the Planet Pirates. It was released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo and it's a platformer. Developed by Sting Entertainment and published by Taito, and also with spoilers up ahead just so you know, but first a little backstory. So I wanted to play Aladdin this week, but I settled on this game instead. So at the start of the game you get an intro credit sequence with the Jetson logo and everything, and then you get George flying across the screen in his spaceship, and if you wait a bit you get some introduction more or less on how to play the game, like a demo. So back at the splash screen you can choose between starting a new game and going into the options, and the options are very customizable in this game. You can see the button layouts of the controller, you can even remap every button to whatever you want, and you can choose between the difficulty of easy to hard. And once the game really starts, there's a cutscene with the family in their home, and George is running late for work, and he's stopped by this character called Captain Zoom. And the Zoom character actually tells him to save the world and the universe from these space pirates run by their leader Zora, this female. Otherwise, the world will fall into an ecological disaster. So George agreed to this, and he's given a sort of a vacuum cleaner kind of thing called a pop, a phenum, osmotic precipitator or something like that. It's very I'm just gonna call it pop from now on. So the intro has a lot of good looking sprite works. It looks just out of the cartoon, just with like a 16-bit filter on it. So once you get into the game, there are a lot of things on screen. So at the top you have players, or player, which refers to how many lives you have. You have stars, which you collect throughout the game. You have power, which is the number of hits you can take. Then you have score with the acronym SC. And then you have time, which is the time you're given to complete the stage. So George was given this multi-purpose tool called the Pop by Captain Zoom, and with it you can suck up blocks and objects through the stages while using the Y button. And it's also used in many of the puzzles. You can actually stick to walls, and by jumping with the B button you can actually scale walls. And later in the game you also use it to climb ceilings. It's a bit finicky, but once you get a hold of it, it gets better. And you can also power up this vacuum by sucking up other things throughout the stages. Other items you can pick up in the game, or suck up I suppose, are popsicles and hamburgers and stuff like that, and it's really hard to see because there's always a lot of stuff on screen, and some of these objects are actually gotten out of the blocks that you destroy by flinging at walls and other enemies and stuff like that. So going through the first stage, there was one cool designer thing that I like. You have these vacuum tubes. If you've seen Futurama and how people travel throughout the cities, that's exactly that, but I bet I was gonna say the Simpsons, but that would be wrong. The Jetsons probably did it first. So here's the thing with the mechanic. You learn how to use the pop and sticking to walls and climbing in the ceilings. There's actually a clever mechanic. The pop can also draw in items even through walls and stuff, like diamonds and tomatoes. There are a lot of things to suck up in this game, and the more or certain things you suck up, the better it becomes. And I didn't really realize what was powering up the pop in the first place. Maybe it was the stars, I have no idea. So one thing I forgot to say about the vacuum tubes is that they remind me of the Sonic games when he go through, well, his tubings, I guess. It felt more like a Sonic game than a Super Nintendo game, if that makes sense. So the first boss is an angry monkey, and he's part of the space pirate crew. I guess they're also eco-terrorists, technically. So what he does, he throws blocks at you, and you suck them up via your pop thing, and you throw it back at him, while on a leveled platform regulated by physical weights. It's a little bit finicky. If you move to the right, the weight shifts and so on. So I didn't have a good strat. Actually, my strat was terrible. I just hold the Y button to suck up everything and brute force it, just barely managed it with the lives that I had. And now it's time for the next stage. It reminded me of the clock tower from Castlevania. So you use your pop a bit here, and then you go up these golden cogs and pistons. So there's a segment in this level where the background scrolls with you once you try to scale these cogs, and you have to use the dash ability to get up, and it's very frustrating because things that previously was ground isn't anymore, so you fall to your death and whatnot. And the enemies on this stage are robots and other robotic things, and that's the theme about the Jetsons. The previous level had these robotic dogs and robotic appliances. And the boss of this stage are two alien fish hybrid thingies in spacesuits, and they toss things between one another and later at you, so you try to avoid their attacks. while on a conveyor belt where these blocks are going down in each direction. So a good strat here would be to stand in one of the corners and just avoid their projectiles and toss blocks at them. And it was actually kind of easy once I figured out I could just stand there and not run around like an idiot. And now it's time for stage 3. It has this flyer biome going on with berries and palm trees and, well, flowers. So there's a climbing segment here where a wall tries to crush you. So you need to spam the A button, because that's the way you climb these walls, and you need to hit switches along the way in order to progress. And it's super stressful. And later there's some more platforming on, platforms in waterfalls. And there are some enemies here they're like porcupines, or I guess you can call them hedgehogs. So they have these tennis rackets to their back of their tail, and they reflect the projectiles that you throw at them. So later in this level there are these big, I guess you call them hamster wheels, that you need to spin in the correct position for you in order to progress. So it's actually made in mode 7, and they actually pop. And then there's a funny segment coming up ahead with space ostriches, and you dispose of them, and there's like this hangar area with I just walked through one of the hangar doors and it opened up to the vacuum of space, and I was like, I was not expecting that. So what you're supposed to do here, you're supposed to jump over the door, or the hangar door I should say, because that's how gravity and space physics works, I guess. And even later in this stage there are these corridors that you need to flip. It also used the mode 7 effect, and it reminded me so much of Castlevania 4. So the boss of this stage is a robot with a wrecking ball attached to it. So the stage kind of scrolls down and the lights go on and off, and the robot swings his wrecking ball at you. So it's kind of an interesting fight, and it dragged on for a bit, let's just say that. And then it was time for a bonus stage. So I'm not really sure how these are triggered, but there was this waterfall stage and you're supposed to collect power-ups and goodies. And now it's time for the next stage, which looks a bit like Mars. So about halfway through the stage everything turns dark, so the only thing you see are the edges of the platforms, which made it a problem because a lot of enemies pop up while you try to platform in the darkness. So the boss on this stage is a robotic cat, and what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to suck in these sparks from him, I guess, and I got a game over here, so I didn't want to continue. But the good thing about this game is that you have more or less unlimited continues, as far as I know. You only lose the score, that's the only penalty. So I gave up on this boss, even though I could technically play it longer for this week. So gameplay. Go through the game and stop Zora's evil space pirate plans of ecological disaster. Control. The Y button is action, the B button is jump, the L and R is the dashing ability, the A button is action and jump, the D-pad moves George around, and the start button pauses. Graphics. I really like the sprite work on the main characters and also the art that's made for the cutscenes. So it looks like if the cartoon had a 16-bit filter over it. And it's actually a good compliment because it looks really good. Sound and music. Hideki Takahagi was the composer of this game, while Mitsuhito Tanaka handled the sound drivers and sound effects. So I really like the track called Cogswells. It's one of those nice tracks, and also one called Futuristic. So the music is really upbeat and really chirpy, and the songs generally fit the mood of the stage. Easter egg secrets and glitches. So this is a thing where if I were to watch the cartoon, I probably would have picked up on certain characters or elements from the cartoon taken to the 8-bit universe, if that makes sense. But as far as I know, they couldn't flow me right by. So in conclusion, I wrote, yes, play it, it's fun. It's fun when you get into the mechanics of how the vacuum works, the pop, and the game looks good, and this sounds really well. However, there are some bad things about the enemies. They respawn once they leave the screen, and some enemy placements are, well, they're terrible. But otherwise, the game is a bit too long for my taste. But on the other hand, you have unlimited continues, so you can just pick up where you left, so it's not that bad of a penalty if you die. So yeah, anyway, thanks for listening and for watching, and take care.